I just came back from one of the biggest transformational Psytrance festivals here in Europe, Boom Festival. And I spent the whole festival completely sober. For them, that might be absolutely normal and you're going sober every time. But the fact is that many, I would say most of the people there, alter their consciousness through certain substances. And I, usually love to do the same. I identify or like to call myself a psychonaut, and I love to alter my state of consciousness through psychedelics, also at festival experiences. And I've done that before at Ozora and other festivals. But this boom, it was my first boom, and I went completely sober. And in this video, I want to share my experience on how it felt, why I went sober, how my perception has been shifting throughout the festival, how I've been interacting with people, and if I could recommend going sober to such a festival, which is an interesting question. And I just want to share a little bit about my experience here at Boom. And why did I go sober? So I bought the festival ticket and I was sure I was gonna go into some kind of psychedelic experiences. Usually I like to do LSD, I like to do maybe a little bit of Changa here and there, further away from the music, not at the music playground. I think that's a bit crazy, but each to their own. I just love to play around and also do rape ceremonies in between, smoke some mapacho, whatever, right? But recently I decided to take a break from all substances for a year. So no rape, no mapacho, no cannabis, no psychedelics, nothing anymore, no coffee even. And still I had this boom ticket and I was like, okay, I'll still go, I still feel like going and I feel drawn to be at this festival. So basically the decision why I went sober was not a conscious one to go to this festival sober by choice, but it was regarding my health situation, and I'm gonna do another video regarding this whole story. But the fact is I found myself at Boom and I was completely sober. And I'll have to say, it was not as easy as I expected it to be. And I still kind of stuck to my decision, obviously, and to my commitment not to consume any substances. But if you're a passionate psychonaut, you're passionate about consuming your substances and altering your consciousness throughout these festivals, there's lots of opportunity there. So that's like the ultimate testing ground for your commitment to sobriety if you choose to stay sober for a certain period of time. And how is that experience different from the altered state consciousness experience at such a festival? So first of all, such a festival, it feels like it's the ultimate psychedelic playground. It's an ultimate, not an ultimate, but it feels like quite a safe space to go into these journeys and to have especially a lot of fun during these psychedelic experiences. For deeper ceremonial work, I like to be alone in my bed or in a ceremonial space with eye mask and headphones to deepen my journey into the inside sacred realms of divinity. But in the outside, for fun especially, I find festivals is a beautiful setting for social connections, and even for a certain sense of personal self-exploration. But this was different in a way that now this fun and the personal exploration and the connection to the divinity was on me. It was not on a substance, the substance is facilitating that process, and it's kind of like, for me personally, it's kind of like making it a bit more easy and effortless for that authenticity to shine, for me to find my flow, for me to connect to people. And all of that was now on me, on my sober, mundane, ordinary me. So that was interesting. That was definitely different, because I noticed, definitely, especially at the beginning of the festival, to really find my flow with the festival, it took a couple days. To quiet down the mind, as without the substances, my mind, at least, it's a bit more active, and it requires or desires a little bit more structure. So I was looking at the map, and I was looking at this workshop I want to do, this concert I want to go to, this artist I want to see, this lecture I want to see, and so I was the boomland is big. So I was like running around from Funky Beach to Samadhi for my morning meditation. I was going there and I had to be there and I wanted to do there. And it's like, everybody is doing festivals in their own way. But for me, that was too much mind. It was too much planning. And I didn't take it too seriously, but I kind of like tried to plan it and it didn't quite work out. And usually when I do consume, I'm a bit more slow. I center myself with rapé every once in a while. You know, with LSD, I'm just flowing around and I know I am where I'm meant to be. And for that insight and for that remembrance of that insight or that knowledge to come out, it took a couple days for me to really meditate and quiet my mind down and find my flow, to actually realize, oh, every person I meet, you know, is the person I am meant to meet. Every place I am, everywhere I am is exactly where I'm meant to be. There's no wrong place to be at the festival, you know, it's all good, it's all interesting, it's all a learning experience. And so to come to this realization and remembrance sober was quite an interesting process. What else was different from the altered states? It was a bit more calm, you know, the craziness of the boom vortex, which can sometimes happen with a lot of consumption of substances, was reduced down to a degree where it was just a bit more grounded, definitely. So I was not flying high too much, but I was very grounded in my festival experience throughout the whole experience. And also navigating the nights was a bit more tough, you know, even without caffeine. I'm taking a break from caffeine as well. So to navigate the nights and make it through the nights, you know, to get into this trance state of dancing sober was also quite interesting. But it was beautiful, you know, it was solid, it was grounded, it was a bit more clear, actually. Everything was a bit more clear, even though the psychedelics, sometimes they increase and accelerate a certain sense of clarity of perception. At times at festivals, I've noticed it last year at Azora, I noticed that the psychedelics are even making me a bit more sloppy. You know, some substances dump me down and make me a bit more sloppy in my way of being at the festival. So being sober was nice to kind of like be clear and grounded in my way of being. But definitely it was a bit more harder to access that deep heart opening where just like the release and the tears and this heart opening state of being, to hold that 24/7 in such an intense setting was a bit more difficult, which then led to, you know, interesting ways of flowing through the festival, to regulate my nervous system, to get enough rest, to, you know, just do some practices that open the heart a little bit more, do a little bit more meditation. And all of these things were kind of like part of this journey for me. So an interesting aspect of the festival experience for many as well is the social aspect. Especially when you're there and you're sober, you know, there's lots of consumption are happening around you. So how do you connect with people? With whom do you connect? Especially if you go alone. You know, I've been there alone, and it's been quite an interesting experience. You know, and that's a topic in and of itself, which I've done separate videos about. You can look on the channel regarding festival videos. So how do you connect with people? And it's interesting because for me personally, I like to connect with people who are high on certain substances, and I do like to connect with people who are sober, obviously. Sometimes it doesn't even matter, you know, people are just so grounded in their trips that they're just navigating properly. But sometimes if people go into a little bit higher dosages, you know, it changes the vibe, especially also in group settings. And when there's a group of people taking the same substance, it's a different vibe. So I could see a group of people taking LSD and I'm like, wow, some jokes, you know, I don't get in my state of consciousness. And I try to find them funny, but sometimes they're not. but sometimes also with MDMA or ketamine or even acid, what I do is I do like to engage with these people in these groups sometimes. And especially I open my state of being so much so that the sensitivity of my state of consciousness is increasing, and I basically get high from the contact high. Because especially in the evenings, I felt that when everybody was dropping something, the energy of the whole field of boom was increasing to such a degree that I noticed my consciousness shifting. Like I was high with the people, and then in close contact with people, I can even drop down into a state that is more closely related to their state of consciousness. So when I'm with people who are drunk, actually also outside of festival settings, I get drunk by being in that setting. When I'm with people who are on ketamine and MDMA, whatever, it's like I drop into that state. With acid, similar. And it's like I drop into the state a little bit. And it's a process, it's an art. Sometimes it happens automatically, but sometimes it's an active process of surrendering into that state to relate a little bit more. And then I can kind of feel like I'm tripping with them without even having intaken any substance. So that's one way to do it, and the other way is just to, if you don't feel the resonance too much, if there's a whole bunch of people tripping on LSD and you're like, you're sober and you don't feel the resonance, then I like to flow out of that setting and just flow into a different setting where I feel more comfortable and aligned. So it's about really looking at how do I feel and where's my alignment, what does feel excited and aligned and alive for me right now? And then, right, it's this personal process of exploration. So a couple highlights. I want to keep it short, actually, this video. A couple highlights for me at Boom, this festival, were doing a mat bath, being naked in the mud and then dancing around the dance temple. And having that experience was... sometimes I was like, I wish I would have been on LSD during that. But that's the thought, identifying thoughts, taking it as a spiritual practice. But that was quite a transformative experience for me, just feeling the earth, the mud on my body and letting it dry in the sun, feeling the elements, feeling connected to the earth, to myself, to my authentic expression without shame. That was beautiful. And also working at Cosmic Care. I haven't been completely volunteering, but I've been volunteering for a day, and that was beautiful as well. Definitely shifting the focus more from getting something out of the festival to giving more something to the festival. Giving something to people has been feeling so good, and it's been a desire for a long time, actually. And I want to continue that forward, going to these transformational festivals, not for myself, not to get something out of it, but actually to give something back as well. So it's this reciprocity that's happening, and this giving and receiving, instead of only getting something or receiving something. It doesn't feel too aligned for me personally, and a personal way to give is Cosmic Care for me. It feels very aligned. It's the first time I've been doing something like this, and it's wonderful people over there. And also just like the conversations with the people are just absolutely magical. That's one of the core reasons I'm at these festivals as well. It's just to connect with people like you guys, I've met some of you even, and it's just good to connect with people, build these relationships, and magic is gonna unfold out of these relationships inevitably. So yeah, that was about it. What did I learn about myself during this experience? Actually, my conclusion was being sober at a festival and being sober in life in general, absolutely possible. If you have the clarity, if you have the commitment, then do that. It's still a magical experience. It still has the potential to be a completely transformative experience. It hasn't been too life-changing for me this time around, but I can see the potential, and it's a great learning experience. It's a great experience of fun. It's a great experience of connection. It just is a great experience. Even being sober, it's a transformational experience, and it's a magical place to be. It's a good place to be, and it's significant what's happening there. The alignment of the people, 50,000 people that are gathering there is just incredible. The conversations that are happening are incredible. The workshops, the work that's being done there. It's really good, you know, it's really good to be there. And still, kind of like for me personally, I also noticed some things where I was like, I was sometimes wanting to be, or I would prefer to be on a certain substance. I would prefer to kind of like facilitate my festival experience to certain degrees with some substances. I think that's just, it feels very aligned for me. And also my orientation has kind of like shifted without the substances, where I was like, I was more drawn inwards and more drawn to real spirituality. So I was like, whoa, it's like, maybe I don't want to dance actually so much, but more like go to a meditation retreat. That's what I feel like doing more right now. You know, but that's also just a phase in my life, you know. So overall, great experience. But has its own unique challenges, you know, the DMT pipe being passed around, or the acid being offered to you, so many substances being offered to you, and especially as a passionate consumer, you know, I would love to take them, but then to say no was actually, it was quite a process of discernment and clarity to actually say no, even with a little bit of sadness in my heart. So recommendations for someone going sober to a festival. Can you go sober to this festival? Absolutely yes. Can you go sober to this festival if you are a passionate psychonaut and consumer of psychedelic substances? Absolutely yes, but definitely, I don't know, expect that there's some invitations coming, and be very clear in your commitment. And is there anything wrong with doing any substances at these festivals? Also, absolutely not. If, I would say, you do it in a responsible way and you honor sometimes the divinity and the sacredness of the substances you are communing with, right? Because especially at these festivals as well, I've seen it this time around a lot as well, being sober. You know, there's a lot of, from my perspective, irresponsible use that is not honoring the substances, and lots of combinations, you know, lots of mixtures of stuff, and it's just, it's sometimes a bit chaotic, you know. So just a word of care, I would say, just be careful with your consumption, and be conscious and aware in the way you are using and utilizing these substances, either at home or at a festival, and I would say especially at a festival. So that was it. That was my little Boom report, being sober at a Boom festival. How was your Boom experience? Have you been to transformational Psytrance festivals or festivals in general? Absolutely let me know in the comments. If you're curious about integrating your festival experience, about integrating your psychedelic experiences, Boom festival experience, there's a link in the video description. I do offer integration coaching. And also you can watch this video next if you are curious about the festival experience and how to consume properly at a festival. So, thank you very much for watching.